In northern Kenya, decades of poor land management and the impact of climate change are destroying critical rangeland ecosystems. The land is deteriorating faster and on a wider scale than at any time in living memory. As the ecosystem collapses, permanent pastures and water points are lost. The impact on human life, livestock viability and wildlife is devastating. During drought, the rich pastures in the foothills of Mount Kenya have become a mecca for migrating pastoralists and their herds.
Orapa olari leipare ontomoni oile kata pantare ontomoni siet oile nele papa loldonyo tenkarake shida pa kiata tenakop etumuta benakop pooki neaku nikitum shida oleng neaku kiata shida onkujit etoyia enakop etaa olamei nikiroyo oshi aidur aapuo oldonyo tenkaraki inewueji apa kidol anaa ninye apa nidim aisaidiai kuna kishu nikiata naa kuna tare. Ore apa enyamali natodua nalo adol teine wueji aitoki kitijing'a inakop nikiaku kumok oleng nikitum emoyian sapuk oleng teinakop nikinya sii ake nkujit nikimut amu ekindapash ake adaa anaa apa ewuon eitu kindur aapuo oldonyo. Nashukunye aata ntare 15. Nashukunye aata ntare 15 neitoki nena naake aiwuang' naing'uikini ntare 10.
To assure the future prosperity of pastoralist communities from across the region, and to protect the critical elephant and wildlife habitats on Mount Kenya, concerted efforts must be made to re-establish this environment. Wajibu, a Kenyan environment and development organisation, is working with local partners and pastoralist communities to rebuild and scientifically monitor the health of the rangelands. During 2011, Wajibu worked with the Laikipia Wildlife Forum to train the Maasai community of Makurian Group Ranch in holistic management and planned grazing.
We're in an area here you can see behind me and around called Oreteti, and this is part of Makurian Group Ranch. Now, a group ranch is basically a privately owned ranch with many owners, so like a cooperative, and the resources used communally. This group ranch has severe problems with land degradation.
Poor grazing management has contributed to this land degradation. Whilst conventional advice would be to reduce livestock numbers, here in these dry rangelands, the total removal of animals and resting of the land could make things even worse. Whereas just a few animals grazing the same area throughout the year will eat everything down to the roots, leaving the land bare, a large herd of wildlife or livestock grazing on the move would not cause the same damage and can actually help to rehabilitate the land. Planned grazing is a key tool of holistic management. The Oreteti Conservancy, which is part of Makurian Group Ranch, has been designated by the community as a planned grazing site. The Community Grazing Committee has divided the Oreteti Conservancy into grazing blocks and drawn up a grazing plan according to an assessment of forage and water availability.
Aumeta ekinya enkop akete mogura apa kijing'ing'ui pooki jumla anya. Eta taata ore ele ramat ekigira anya eng'ueji anaa esehemu. Neeku taata nikidol anaa ore kinyata enkop anaa ina sehemu nikidol anaa ekiata akiba niking'ua mogura apa kijing' enkop aidapashakino anya eng'uei pooki.
The action of hundreds of hooves moving across the land as one unit recreates the positive impact of natural wildlife migrations. Hard, capped soil surfaces are broken up, allowing for improved water infiltration, and the moisture and nutrients present in the rich, fertile waste of the herd stimulates new grass growth and the process of decay. Over time, as land health improves, more carbon will be stored in the soils. At Wajibu workshops, the community are offered advice and training in land health, climate change, and the potential for soil carbon sequestration.
Zinatafuta njia kuonesha community na wakulima na wale watu wa ng'ombe kama wanachunga ardhi yao na afya ardhi inaongezeka na mazingira inaongezeka, labuda itapata njia ya kupata faida kidogo kutoka hiyo carbon market.
Iko kitu nataka kujua kutoka kwako. Na mimi nafurahi kusikia wewe umeguza wakati ulikuwa hapa. Unasema mambo ya hii kitu inaitwa carbon site, kitu kama hiyo. Hii kitu unasema akiwa itakuja kuwekwa ndani ya mchanga vile mimi nasikia inaweza kufanya inji ikuwe tena mzuri, sijui. Hii kitu itakuwa mbolea?
Ni kama mbolea. Kama nataka pima rutuba ya mchanga, ni gumu kuendelea kuchimba yote kupima yote. Kina science wanasema wanapima wachache, alafu kutoka hiyo wachache kwa ajili wanajua mchanga kabla ya mchanga mahali yote. Unajua hata kusimamia hapa, tulisimamia juu ya mchanga kabla karibu zaidi ya 5-10. Iko tofauti. Sawa.
In order to assess changes in land health and soil carbon, it is essential to establish a scientific baseline. Wajibu work with and support scientists at ICRAF, the World Agroforestry Centre, to determine scientific baselines at all Wajibu project sites.
For a number of years we've been, here at ICRAF, we've been working on developing what we call the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework, or the LDSF, which is basically a standardized set of methods for monitoring, for measuring baselines and monitoring ecosystem health, including soil health, of course, which is one of our main focuses. But we also look at vegetation, we look at land use, land cover, and so on and so forth. One of the key ecological variables that we look at and we study in great detail is actually soil carbon. Not necessarily traditionally so much for carbon trading and so on, but more because it is a very important indicator of the health of the soil.
The Wajibu field supervisor, who has been trained by ICRAF, works with local community members to undertake ground measurements across a 100 square kilometre sampling area. Wajibu field teams follow ICRAF's land degradation surveillance framework to collect soil samples, undertake vegetation transects, and perform water infiltration tests at the 160 geo-referenced, randomly located sites across the sampling area. The samples and data are processed at the ICRAF laboratories in Nairobi.
The samples, once logged in, they go through our spectral diagnostics lab, which includes various measurements using X-ray fluorescence and X-ray diffraction for basically for the chemical composition of those samples and for the mineral composition of the samples. Then they go on to our near-infrared and mid-infrared lab, where we basically do the spectral screening of the samples. And from each of these samples we get a spectral signature in the respective wavelengths that the different instruments operate at. These spectral signatures, they tell us a whole lot of different things about the sample. It could be to do with the carbon content, the physical properties of the sample, other fertility characteristics of the sample, and so on. So it's an extremely information-rich data set that we get from these instruments.
This map shows soil compaction and erosion risk across Makurian, the Mukogodo forest, and neighbouring ranches. The red and yellow areas are at the highest risk of erosion. During heavy rainfall, these soils become saturated and unstable, leading to widespread erosion. Here we can see the soil carbon map of the same area. Notice how the areas with the lowest density of soil carbon, shown here in yellow, correlate directly to the high erosion risk areas from the previous map. Wajibu's fieldwork will provide regionally relevant scientific insight into the effectiveness of holistic management as a rangeland rehabilitation model. Already, after just 1 year, the landscape of Makurian has begun to visibly change. As the land continues to recover and vegetation increases, the deep roots of perennial grasses will create a structure, holding the soils together and increasing carbon sequestration.
Ore naa peiteru holistic management, ketodua iltung'anak kumok ajo keisaidia erishata toki. Kore anaa venye apa naisoma yiok Richard o Matthew sii daake abaki, nikidol ajo itodua ake ninye ang'as yiok olapa arampai apa oji naa kegira aibok naa nkulupuok metaa meesita orkasi, neeku keji naa apa kirora nkulupuok. Neeku kore naaduo kulingana onena tokiting pooki, nikitum nkishu neeku mekure ibung nkishu moyiaritin, mekure etumi olamei, neeku mekure egira yiok nkishu aya enaa apa tedukuya. Neeku entoki sidai oleng ena naaduo tooltung'anak pooki lena paasha naa toonena tokitin pooki naisoma yiok lelo tung'anak pooki.
Esidai ele ari oleng anaa kutoka peekiyiolou enikoni nkirrit oonkishu, kutoka peekiyiolou enikoni ildorrot nesidanu naa amu ore kuldo dorrot kitara apa etuata pii, etuata lelo dorrot apa liarjijo amu keidashitai naa mepuo nkishu tenkeju nabo. Ore naa peeku inji etiu nkishu taata anaa vile enaitoduaki yiok te Maradi, kwanza ninye ore nkishu neibung kule metaa keeta enkiteng kule. Ore nkishu neeku ketum oloing'oni odirr, meitoki nkishu aaku irmong'i lasho enapita. Neiturraa naa amu keeta oloing'oni, kedirrita naa oloing'oni. Enikitodua sidai tene oleng.
This community can clearly see the benefits of this new approach and have already begun to roll out planned grazing across the other 6 villages on Makurian. If you are interested in supporting Wajibu to expand holistic management across northern Kenya and to finalise the development of a scientifically rigorous rangeland monitoring tool, please contact info@wajibu.com.